Recently, we have seen the eco-extremist group Extinction Rebellion blocking commuters in Edmonton and Calgary in so-called solidarity with a handful of lefties who oppose critical natural gas infrastructure. We have also seen the NDP recently passed a resolution supporting these eco-extremists who have, among other things, get this, glued their unclothed bodies to the London Stock Exchange. You can't make this stuff up. Can the Premier tell us how Extinction Rebellion and the NDP are ignoring Alberta's recent strides on the environmental file?
The Honourable Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the NDP member for Edmonton Highlands Norwood said that there is a place for this organization, Extinction Rebellion, in our classrooms. This is the same organization that said this week that, quotes, not only will pipelines be blown up, but we can be certain that world leaders will be put on trial for treason or worse, will be killed, quote unquote. Why does the NDP think that an organization that explicitly supports violence, assassinations, and terrorism should be in our classrooms?
The Honourable Member for Peace River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through you to the Premier. And as the Premier mentioned, given that the NDP member from Edmonton Highland Norwood has indicated that Extinction Rebellion should share its extreme misanthropic views in our classrooms with our students, and given that the NDP caucus has made it extremely clear that they want nothing more than for oil and gas industry to fail, can the Premier please tell us about good news stories that we have brought about in the oil and gas industry in Alberta?
The Honourable Premier.
Absolutely, but before I get to that, Mr. Speaker, I think we need to recall that several members of the current NDP caucus went out in front of this legislature a couple of years ago to join Greta Thunberg and Extinction Rebellion in calling for a complete shutdown of the oil and gas industry, the end of all pipelines. They stood on a platform with Extinction Rebellion that is calling for world leaders to, quote, be killed. An organization that says pipelines will be blown up. Mr. Speaker, will the loony left on the other side stand up, retract, and apologize for being associated with this?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through you to the Premier. Given that the loony left eco-extremist David Suzuki has recently threatened that pipeline infrastructure will be blown up, and given that is a clear dog whistle to his extremists and their supporters that they should engage in illegal, violent, and possibly even deadly behavior for the goal of blocking the infrastructure that makes this country great. And given that Extinction Rebellion's National Action and Strategy Coordinator said, quote, not only will pipelines be blown up, but we can be certain that world leaders will be put on trial for treason or worse, be killed. Direct quote, Mr. Speaker. Can the Premier tell us what our government is doing to protect our energy infrastructure?
The Premier.
Well, amongst other things, we passed the Defense of Critical Infrastructure Act, which the NDP opposed, Mr. Speaker. You know, meanwhile, their ideological fellow travelers are blocking traffic in Edmonton again on the high-level bridge, and get this, Mr. Speaker, with a propane heater. You cannot make this up. Oh. Mr. Speaker, why don't they stop playing footsies with the extreme left that is increasingly endorsing violence, even assassinations? Why don't they condemn David Suzuki, who said that Stephen Harper should be locked up? Why don't they speak up for Alberta oil and gas workers?